Story 1. If everywhere you go has a bad odor, it may be time to check your shoes. This might be a cliche to many, but it helped me a lot to change my perspective on essentially everything. Story 2. My brother-in-law once said that mental illness is no excuse for poor behavior. This made me reflect on myself and control my behavior better around others. Story 3. You would think the most influential thing I have read or heard would come from Nobel laureates or Time magazine's Person of the Year winners, but it actually came from Alex the Lion in Madagascar when I saw the movie in college. The grass isn't always greener, and remembering him in the movie, he was always happy with what he did, where he lived, and what he ate. He was content with what he had and didn't focus on what others did. Yes, he tried to excel at work, but mostly because he loved what he was doing, not due to pressure. I thought I would like to be like him. Story 4. What my grandmother told me once was, "Your father loves you so much. Unfortunately, he just loves himself more." This really put a lot of his actions into perspective for me. Story 5. Someone online said, "Life is short. Argue with as many strangers online as possible." I even created multiple accounts to ensure I can still communicate with accounts I have blocked or who have blocked me. Story 6. One day at a time. The past cannot be changed. The future cannot be predicted. The only thing in your control is the present. Story 7. One of our greatest freedoms is how we react to things. The mole in The Boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. Additionally, the entirety of Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot speech is worth reading, and the book is a good read as well. Story 8. Never take the opinion of a stranger. This means not to accept negative criticism from those who are insignificant in your life. It transformed how I interact with others and significantly boosted my self-esteem and my mental approach to social interactions. Story 9. Be cautious when accepting advice from individuals who will not face the consequences of their recommendations. Story 10. This too shall pass. It's apparently a Bible verse, but I have no idea. It's just something my Irish grandmother used to say. When I was young, I thought it was about the bad things ending eventually, and that was true. So just keep going until it's over, and it will get better. Now that I'm older, I realize it's also about the good things in life. They only last a little while, so we should appreciate them in the moment. It's a nice way to live. The other saying I think about a lot is, do good recklessly. My Irish grandmother was a wise and fiery woman who is greatly missed. Story 11. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Be wary of them. I have seen too many cases where this quote applies in life. Story 12. People may not remember what you said or did, but they will remember how you made them feel. Toni Morrison. Story 13. You are the main character of your life, not others. If someone wants to leave, let them. Your destiny is never tied to anyone who walks away. Story 14. Life goes on long after the thrill of living is gone. This resonated with me deeply following a night of celebration. Story 15. You are not lazy. You are very depressed. This realization made me break down in tears, as I had been called lazy my entire life. It turns out I also have attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, and hearing this from a mental health professional changed my entire view of myself. The self-hatred diminished significantly as I understood that what I perceived as laziness was actually my struggle with strategies and coping skills related to depression and ADHD. Story 16. My aunt, who I don't particularly like, said to me, "You don't have to say anything. Just breathe." I had lost my second dog, and only the Lord knows the pain I went through. I won't forget her saying that to me. It helped me more than anything. Story 17. After all is said and done, more is said than done. That is why I dislike meetings. I could have been productive, but instead we had to discuss it. Story 18. When I was 18, after I was reeling off another excuse for why I was late to our punk band practice, the guitarist very matter-of-factly, without judgment or recrimination, said, "Either you're the unluckiest person in the world, or you lie a lot." That hit home, and though it took another decade for me to stop lying completely, the journey started right there. Story 19. My best friend died in 2021 at the age of 23. One day at work, A few months before the end, I snuck into a service closet to call him while he was having a bad day at the hospital. In truth, it wasn't very risky at all. My work buddy was the only other person there, and it was a slow night. I played it up a bit to my sick friend because I wanted him to feel special, like I was dropping everything just to hear his voice for a moment. He had a compromised immune system from birth and got sick often, but the one that did him in was a rare fungal infection that only 7 other people in the world had. Of those 7, he was the 4th to have it on his spine. I don't know how accurate that is, and I don't remember the exact name of the fungus, but I do know that he was flown to a special government hospital and treated for free so they could study him at the same time. I talked to him like it was any other conversation we had ever had. I only acknowledged his situation when he chose to bring it up. Otherwise, I just tried to be the goofball he liked spending time with. Every laugh I got out of him was a victory to me. I'd also encourage all the plans he made before being hospitalized. I often asked, "Have you thought more about doing things when you get out of here?" It seemed important to me to talk to him like he was just stuck in the mud for a little bit rather than sinking deeper into the lake. Our very last conversation was about the kind of Samoyed he wanted to buy. He asked if I would help him take care of it while he was getting better, so I guess it worked, for whatever good that was. At the end of that phone call, tucked into the back of a service closet, he told me that the nurses, injections, chemotherapy, catheters, and intravenous lines made him feel like a slab of meat being hacked to shreds on a plate. He told me that for the first time in weeks. That phone call made me feel like a human being again. It's the kindest thing anybody has ever said to me. I got to know exactly where I stood with the smartest and most ambitious person I had ever known. My big brother in every way except blood, my hero. I don't know if I could have held it together after the end if he hadn't told me that. But he did, and so I did. Tell your friends all the bold and good things they deserve to hear. You don't need any reason. Story 22, which I'm not sure had an impact on me, as in, I could have loved them since they fit my own ideals. One was from a story whose name I unfortunately cannot recall, but to paraphrase, if a doctor had opened the chest of a man and held the heart in his hand, he wouldn't know more about it than either you or me. The other was by Omar Suleiman. Oh, Omar, don't judge people unfairly because you do not know who is more beloved to God. Story 21. It's all risky. I'll tell you how risky life is. You are not going to make it out alive. Jim Rohn. Story 22. Have you tried being less of yourself so others don't get annoyed? No one wants to hear random facts. Story 23. Not even 1,000 generations can rebuild the history that was lost. If we destroy everything, what will be left for our children? If you can make a little difference, please do it. Any good will do. We have also lost knowledge that our children need to learn from, whether good or bad, so they in turn can make the world a better place. Story 24. What someone thinks about you is none of your business. Once I unlocked that part of my brain, I felt like I unloaded a significant amount of stress. There are prejudices and beliefs that others use to shape their perspective, which are part of their story, not mine. Whatever they think is their own doing, not mine. Story 25. If their life is always chaotic, your life will always be chaotic as long as you stay. My therapist explained one of the many reasons I had to divorce and cut my ex-wife with borderline personality disorder out of my life for good. Although a simple sentence on paper, it made me realize that the only way to escape the chaos was to leave. Story 26. The one who walks with the wise will become wise, but the one who deals with fools will suffer. Story 27. You never praise me nowadays, and that's why I feel hurt. Story 28. I read this in a manga called Berserk. There is no paradise for you to escape to, and even if you force back what was lost, it won't be the same as it was. Story 29. There is a war going on outside. No one is safe from it. You could run, but you cannot hide forever. Story 30. A wise older man at a rave once told me not to let anyone bring me down. That advice had a great effect on my life. Story 31. I brought you into this world. I can take you out of it. This happens way too often, and he didn't even have to say it for me to believe it. Story 32. Everything is a choice. Where you are right now is a result of a series of choices made along the way. It may seem unrealistic, but I find it empowering. Even when the choices appear to be unfavorable, the intention and deliberateness of taking ownership can be helpful. Ultimately, it comes down to making better choices if you are dissatisfied with the direction your past decisions have taken you. Story 33. Not so much a sentence but a paragraph from my favorite books. We humans do not understand compassion. In each moment of our lives, we betray it. Yes, we know of its worth. Yet in knowing, we then attach a value to it. We guard the giving of it, believing it must be earned. Compassion is priceless in the truest sense of the word. It must be given freely and in abundance. Story 34. This is really sad, but I am 35, and when I was a kid in middle school, people who were 35, mostly teachers, would let it slip that they wished they had died when they had the chance. That certainly did not make me look forward to growing up before I usually hit double digits. Story 35. No matter where you go, there you are. My mother said this, and it used to confuse me until I got much older. Story 36. How many minutes of your life are you going to spend caring about that person? She was right. I don't care is the way. Story 37. Many who live deserve death, and some who die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Gandalf really convinced me that the death penalty is not the way to go. Story 38. If you decide not to pick up your dirty laundry and just leave it on the floor, that's fine, but that's your life. It made me realize I am not the fantasy version of myself I imagine in my head, but rather the actions I take. Story 39. It is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. In other words, just because something really bad happened to you does not mean it is acceptable for you to play the victim forever. For example, I am sorry that you were abused as a child, but it is now your responsibility to seek healing and ensure the abuse ends with you. Story 40. Your stool test has come back positive. You need a colonoscopy. 2 tumors and robotic surgery later. Story 41. No one receives anything in life until they truly deserve it. Life is not change. I mean, how can a single change impact my life? However, it had a significant effect on the way I think. Story 42. A true master is an eternal student. Master E. League of Legends. Always learn new things. Anything you excel at always has more to discover. It is also very humbling. Story 43. If you think you're going through a hard time, always remember that there is someone out there going through much worse. Dad. Story 44. If you don't take the opportunity, someone else will. Never too old to start over. Do you have to lose? Story 45. You don't need to know what you want. You can decide, choose, and act. I sometimes struggle with paralysis by analysis. I spend too much time trying to be sure that something is what I really want before moving on, and it is a huge waste of time since most decisions are not irrevocable. This is similar to the idea that a good plan executed today is better than a perfect plan executed next week, as the opportunity might be gone or the situation may change by then. Anyway, this perspective has really helped me. Story 46. 0% chance of paternity. 15 years ago, I was in a much better place with a much better woman, but that nearly killed me. Story 47. Don't confuse activity with progress. I am also impacted by the phrase, luck is where opportunity meets preparation. Story 48. I don't recall the whole passage, but I remember this specific line, do not stress over something that won't matter in 2 years. I read it a couple of years ago, and it changed how I deal with my low moments of anger and discontent. Story 49. Have you ever regretted exercising? Have you ever regretted going for a run or riding a bike? Story 50. Every silver lining has a touch of gray. Robert Hunter in his song Touch of Gray, famously recorded by the Grateful Dead. It didn't mean much to me when I first heard it as a teen, but as I got older, that line got me thinking. There are people who dedicate their lives to finding and embracing the dark cloud in every silver lining. I was on the way to becoming one of them. I don't want to be that person, and thanks to reflecting on it, I work on avoiding that mindset. Story 51. Most of the writings of Epictetus have been incredibly impactful for me since I first read the Enchiridion about 12 years ago in a philosophy course. The particular sentence that has stayed at the forefront of my mind is, Some things are in our control and others are not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and, in a word, not our own actions. Epictetus, the Enchiridion 135 BC. Story 52. Don't let perfection get in the way of being good enough. I know this isn't the exact wording that Voltaire used, but this is what I was told, and it makes more sense to me. Story 53. My dad used to say, don't just do something, stand there. He taught me to think under pressure. He also said, if everyone works a little bit harder, no one has to work as hard. Story 54. Wall is the hardest opponent. My friend said this once. He plays tennis and I play volleyball, and I can confirm this with complete confidence. Story 55. When deciding whether to take action but feeling hesitant because it may take too long to accomplish, remember that time will pass regardless of your decision. You might as well proceed and have something to show for it in the end. Story 56. People can often behave irrationally. Do not let them hinder your progress, and do not expect too much from them. Story 57. Your job should fit around your self-care, and household surfaces are for activities, not storage. Story 58. The gunny is dead. That forward observer they sent because you were too busy to show up dropped a round on his own head. He killed himself and the gunny. Where were you, man? The short answer was that I was where the authorities told me to go. The authorities in I Corps, Vietnam, had an urge to keep me busy as an artillery forward observer. So it was their fault, right? No, that's not right. That's not how Sergeant's words have lived inside my head for nearly 50 years. How it finally worked out is disclosed in the following story, which you should know is pretty long. Best I can do. Story 59. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. This advice was given to me by a former boss, but it applies to both life and work. Story 60. The answer to the question I would tell my younger self is that adults are often uncertain and do not have all the answers. I spent a lot of mental energy thinking I would eventually break through and figure out life like my parents and older family members. However, it turns out that life can feel like a significant deception. In a related thought, Chuck Palahniuk once mentioned during a reading, "Do you want to hear the saddest sentence ever? It's not mine. It's possibly from Annie Proulx. All dogs want is for no one to ever leave." Story 61. Hi, this is Kathleen from the hospital, and I regret to inform you that my mother has passed away on April 30th, 2008. We worked very hard on him for over an hour, but I'm sorry we lost him on March 26th, 2015. Tiff Robert called. Michael Jackson died on June 25th, 2009. Story 62. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more foreign to the universal aspirations of our people than war and the threat of war? Ronald Reagan. Story 63. It is better to admit that you walked through the wrong door than to stay in the wrong room for the rest of your life. I forgot where I read this, but it really helps me build my courage to take action. Story 64. In a particularly turbulent time in my life, my grandmother once said to me, "You can't go on like this." In that moment, I suddenly thought, she's right, and it's up to me to change that. Something clicked, and I realized I had the power to stop the madness, so I did. Story 65. Another thought from me came from an episode of The Crown. All human beings have a right to be vulnerable. I found that very beautiful and moving. Story 66. Just because you could have done things differently does not mean they would have turned out the way you wanted. Story 67. It will soon be over. A totally innocuous phrase said to me by my local pharmacist was exactly what I needed to hear when I was on the verge of collapse, nursing my dad through his terminal cancer. It held me up, kept me together, and made me treasure every painful minute I had left with my dad. I wouldn't change a single thing, no matter how hard it was. Life is short and finite, and we all spend too long caught up in the small stuff. Story 68. Don't attach a story to every situation. I appreciate this way of thinking because it helps maintain a clearer mindset instead of repeatedly overthinking a situation that doesn't require that much contemplation. Story 69. If you have to choose between disappointing yourself or disappointing someone else, always choose someone else. Story 70. The wisdom of the eagles. So many times it happens that we live our lives in chains and we never know we have the key. Story 71. Dr. Wayne Dyer said, "If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." This has impacted me in several ways over the years. Story 72. It's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. That line changed my entire perspective on life. I used to dwell on my challenging childhood, but after hearing that line, I transformed my mindset. Whenever I face challenges, I think about that line, and it helps me keep going. Story 73. You cannot do that, said in the context that I did not have the ability to perform the task. That is a powerful motivator. Story 74. I would have loved you forever. It was the last thing my ex-husband said to me after we got divorced. He died less than a year later by his own hand. Story 75. The true measure of someone's character is based on what they would do if they could get away with it. Story 76. Feeling angry doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you human. As someone who grew up in a very religious household and was taught that anger is a sin and that Jesus died for my sins, I found this realization to be quite impactful. Story 77. You've got to get through it to get to the end of it. I always think about this when I'm facing something challenging that I don't want to do. Story 78. When I was 14, I had a crush on a girl in my class after moving to the city. It was the first time I had feelings for someone. Since we were in the same class, it wasn't easy to hide my emotions. I always looked at her, and during class I turned around when I heard her speaking. To me, she was the prettiest. A few years later, everyone knew I had a crush on her, and I couldn't stop thinking about her. Then the day came that changed my whole personality. After the 15-minute break, all the classes were gathered in front of their rooms, waiting for the teacher to open the classrooms. There I was, 14 years old, severely overweight with pimples and poor hygiene. Suddenly, she shouted, "I am embarrassed that you love me." My world stood still for a moment. I was always a quiet kid. I felt I didn't deserve it, and I fell into depression. Once I recovered, I changed my life. I lost weight. I am now in very good shape and people respect me. Work on yourself. Nothing is stronger than your mind. Protect it at all costs. Story 79. In this world, Elwood, you must be either very smart or very pleasant. Well, for years I was smart. I recommend being pleasant. You may quote me. Elwood P. Dowd, Jimmy Stewart, Harvey. Story 80. I stood naked in front of a copper, and he said, "Now lift yourself up." I knew exactly what he meant. That wasn't a good day. Story 81. You are not better than anyone, and no one is better than you. I was 17 and thought I was impressive. I needed a dose of reality. My stepdad was difficult, but this phrase was necessary. Story 82. No is a complete sentence. You do not have to break yourself or punish yourself for the acceptance of others or for people to like you. Do what is best for you. Story 83. Change your mind and you can change your life. When I heard that, I took some time for introspection and discovered that my thoughts were very negative. I took steps to remove negative thinking and replaced it with positive thoughts. The change in my life was noticeable to me. Story 84. What if you didn't just accept that it has to be this way? For context, I had completed 3 years of intensive dialectical behavior therapy, which left me feeling that it is what it is regarding everything and just being depressed about what I couldn't change. Dialectical behavior therapy taught me that pain is normal, expected, and necessary, which isn't true. Story 85. In a moment of frustration, my ex-wife once said to me, "You're the most negative person I've ever met." This struck me to my core when she said it because I knew she was right. I have always been the kind of person who looks at life and sees what is working and what needs to be resolved. It has brought me a lot of success, but it also tends to manifest as finding fault in everything and everyone. Ever since that day, I have tried to focus more on people's feelings and on what is going right in my life. It is a constant struggle. I am wired the way that I am, but I make a little progress every day. I hope that one day this problem I am trying to solve will become second nature to me. Story 86. Remember, upon the conduct of each depends the fate of all. Every member of the team, every employee, and every friend counts. Choose them wisely. Story 87. I don't have to. I get to. My father-in-law was dying of cancer quickly. For all the little mundane things in his life that most people tolerate, he worked to find joy until the end. So when I'm having a hard time, I remember that I don't have to do something. I get to because I'm here and I'm healthy enough to do it. Story 88. You're only as happy as your most unhappy child. While my kids are generally happy, I can feel my own mood change depending on their experiences. Story 89. Things will be better in the future. My aunt said this without knowing her teenage niece was struggling with suicidal thoughts. I wasn't as talkative as before, so she probably thought it was related to school. The vagueness gave me some hope that if I just waited, maybe things I couldn't control since I was just a child would improve. I often question whether I should have believed her. Story 90. Other people's emotions are not your responsibility. Taking a step back from managing the emotions of those around me has been freeing. It isn't my problem. I don't have to mitigate others' emotions in order to feel safe. Story 91. Better exists, even if the best does not. This quote from a show may seem trivial, but it helped me find a more stable energy state. We can endlessly argue about which direction is best, but we can all agree on a direction that is better. Story 92. Not that it feels significant at any one time, but a lifetime of hearing my family say, "I love you," has clearly had a positive effect on my life. Consider expressing it to someone in your life who already knows. It's good to hear it out loud. Story 93. You can do everything right and still have conflict with the people you care about. There is no way to avoid it, so it's better to learn how to deal with it than to try to avoid it completely. Story 94. I cannot carry it for you, but I can carry you. We cannot always directly bear someone's burdens, but we can support them in other ways. Story 95. Your brain often presents the worst-case scenario, and most of the time it isn't that bad. This understanding helps me manage my anxiety and allows me to focus on the tasks I need to complete without overthinking. Story 96. Other people are not against you, they are just for themselves. Learn this and you will make friends out of enemies. I got that insight from Ed Calderon on a podcast. Story 97. It costs money to be foolish. My dad told me this after I did something very unwise, and it ended up costing me a lot of money. Story 98. I was raised on welfare and attended 9 different public schools. I was placed in classes for learning disabilities. I left home at 17 after getting into a fistfight with my stepdad, who had just married my mom. Despite living homeless, I went to college and achieved a perfect ACT score, eventually becoming an engineer. I worked my way through school without any student loans or assistance from anyone. After my stepdad passed away at 50 from cancer, I moved back in to take care of my mom. He had just built a large house with 4 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 3 fireplaces, and 2 kitchens. My mom was worried about making the mortgage payments. I showed her my paycheck. I was the top engineer at a major telecommunications company and the youngest they had ever hired. My mom said, "You can't be worth that much." Story 99. It is everyone's first time living. We must live in the present moment because we do not know the future, and if we live in the past, that is all we can create since it is all we know. Story 100. I'm so sorry I yelled at you. I thought you needed it then. I didn't realize at the time that the person who was hardest on you and yelled the most was yourself. This was said to me by my school teacher when I met them again as an adult. We were great friends until he passed away. Story 101. Just because you have an opinion does not mean you are right. I heard that in high school, and it made me more reflective about my opinions. I could very well be wrong. Story 102. When I was about 11 years old, my dad, who had been in and out of my life since birth, told me, "You will never be as tall, strong, or good-looking as I am. You are going to be short, fat, and frumpy like your mom. As a young boy, having to take on many responsibilities around the house without a father figure made me realize he was not someone I could look up to anymore. I would sit with my bags packed, ready for him every time he said he was coming to get me, only for him to never show up. When he made that remark, I realized I wouldn't care if I ever saw him again. I observed how he treated people, especially women and his own children. I listened to what others said about him, and I promised myself I would never behave that way. I am a man of my word. I work hard. Although I have gone through a divorce, the child we have together knows that I am always available for whatever they need. I text them multiple times a day to check on how they are doing and if they need anything. Even after the divorce, I never speak ill of their mother in front of them or around them. Years later, my dad's twin sister, with whom I am close, called me and expressed how proud she is of me. She said that I am the complete opposite of my father and that my sister and I did not deserve to have him as a father. She also apologized for everything we experienced while growing up. Looking back, I realized that those experiences made me a much better person today. Story 103, Run off determination, not motivation. I actually made this myself. This works great for me because I never have motivation, but I am a very determined person. It has helped me do things I never had the energy for, and by living this way, I've changed my attitude about life. Story 104. She's weeping on the phone and says, "The doctor called back. It's cancer." My wife says this, and our youngest is 3. I don't think I slept properly for the next 2 years. I aged a decade in 22 months. Story 105. Tired of lying in the sunshine and staying home to watch the rain. You are young, life is long, and there is time to kill today. Then one day you find 10 years have gone by. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. Story 106. I do talk negatively about you and make up things to make you seem bad, but when he talks positively about his kids, I make sure I say something good about you, my mom said when I questioned her about why she speaks poorly of me to my stepdad. Story 107. God himself remains unable to be loved by everyone. Why are you still trying? Wise words given to me by my very religious grandmother. Hearing her say those words while trying to comfort me for not fitting in at school truly turned a switch in me, helping me live with myself better, to be myself, and to accept myself. Story 108. You can accept a person or reject a person, but you cannot change them, no matter how much you love them. Story 109. But in the end, it is only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Story 110. I'm sorry to tell you, but your mom passed away. I was 8. I will never forget the look on everyone's faces when they told me. Story 111. Un jour, un ancien m'a dit une chose simple, presque sans y penser. Il m'a regardé et a déclaré: Si tu fais ce que tu as toujours fait, tu resteras exactement là où tu es. Je sais que ce n'est pas une citation de film ou une phrase d'impact d'un coach, mais cette phrase m'a fait prendre conscience de l'échappatoire que je me répétais chaque jour. Chaque fois que je tournais en rond, que je repoussais ou que je me disais je vais y arriver, c'était cela le mur. Je faisais la même chose, en espérant un autre résultat. Depuis, chaque fois que je bloque, je reviens à cela. Et si cela fait mal, c'est souvent que cela touche juste. Story 112. This was spoken about me in front of me by my narcissistic, abusive stepmother to my dad. Don't worry, Doug. One day he'll turn 18, and we'll kick him out, and we'll be rich again. Story 113. I have a date later. My ex-husband and I were separated, but I thought we were trying to work on things. We went on a date and then back to his apartment. We had intimacy, and I was hopeful we might move back in together after the trial separation ended. I was sitting on his couch afterward when he went to his front door, opened it, and just stood there. I asked, "What?" He replied, "I have a date later," while pointing at the open door. I received the divorce paperwork the next day. Story 114. A friend told me that his old boss, upon retirement, was asked if he had any regrets. He said he regretted missing his kids growing up because of all the hours he worked. At the time, I had a young family and was doing the same, as I felt this was what fathers do. I went home and spoke to my wife, who expressed her dislike for my constant absence and mentioned that we could manage without all the overtime. I changed how I worked from that moment on. I have always been grateful for that conversation, and I think about it often. Story 115. You need to take responsibility for your own happiness, said my ex. Okay, I did, and I left. Thanks for the advice. Story 116. Famous. Love is never wasted, for its value does not rest on reciprocity. Says Lewis. Personally, you don't have to insert yourself into every conversation. My wife's cousin Erin, she said it very sweetly. She was trying to be helpful, not rude, and it hit me right in the face. Story 117. When he moved out, my adult son asked me, "What are you going to do when there's no one left to take care of and nothing left to fix?" For context, I was the one who always worked every day, made sure all the bills were paid and dinner was ready. After always being the caretaker, it was a shock to realize that I had never once in 27 years done anything strictly for myself or put myself first. Honestly, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do. Story 118. I would prefer to base my morals on reason rather than on assertions of authority. Anti-authoritarianism is not merely about rejecting authority because of a desire to rebel or to do the opposite of what someone instructs. It is about prioritizing critical thought over blind obedience. This perspective significantly influenced my thinking. Story 119. My son and I were sitting on the couch watching TV when a Bowflex commercial came on. "Son, he's got big muscles, huh, Dad?" "Me sure does, bud." "Son, like you're supposed to have, huh, Dad?" "Me, yeah, buddy." "Son, but you don't, do you, Dad?" "Me." I started working out the next day. Story 120. It can be two things. I had many issues with binary thinking. I still struggle to see the nuances, but I can recognize the black and white in each person or situation now. Story 121. There's a bit of backstory, but my mother once told me, "Look at you. Seriously. I wouldn't unlock the door for you either." Put a lot in perspective. Story 122. Until death, all defeat is psychological. It may sound silly, but it completely changed my perspective as someone who is clinically depressed. Story 123. One of my coworkers told me that she rarely gets into conflict or takes offense because she pays more attention to people's intentions rather than their words or actions. For example, if someone says something that offends me, before responding, I take a minute to think about what their intent was behind the words. Were they actually trying to upset me? Maybe they didn't express it well. Perhaps they were simply trying to convey their own emotions. Living by this principle has made a world of difference in my life. It has made me realize that most people do not actually set out to hurt others. Story 124. You're looking for logic where there is none, my dad said when I could not figure out why someone was doing something horrible. It's hard for my brain to comprehend, but there are people who do things without any reason. Story 125. When I was a kid, I asked my mom why she set aside her career to raise a family. She said, "Very few people sit on their deathbed and think, I should have spent more time at work. But most people think, I should have spent more time with my family. When I am lying there, I don't want to have that regret." This perspective changed my view of her and my dad as well. I felt bad for him because I knew he would have that regret. He is retiring soon and has been working from home since the pandemic. He is clearly trying to make up for lost time, but all his kids have moved out, and I can tell it weighs on him. Story 126. Don't let others' opinions of you define who you are, said by the kindest, most beautiful girl in high school. Context. She was wheelchair-bound due to multiple sclerosis and was the most popular girl in school before and after her diagnosis. I was a sophomore on the varsity football team, playing as cornerback. She was a junior. I played during a homecoming game against a rival school. I only started because all the other defensive backs ahead of me were injured. I struggled throughout the night, facing Division I prospects who were seniors at wide receiver. My coaches chewed me out, calling me pathetic. After the game, while waiting outside the locker room for my older brother, who was a star defensive end and Division I prospect, she noticed I looked defeated. We talked for a bit, And I remember her compassion and warmth from that conversation. Story 127. Help everyone around you get what they want, and you will get everything you want. I have been applying this principle to my personal and business life, and it has worked great. It's even the quote at the bottom of my business signature. Rasputin, partner and founder. My company name, Executive Search, Strategic Recruitment. 1234 Some Street, Annapolis, Maryland. Phone, 202-555-1212. Cell, 202-555-1234. Calendar, book time with Rasputin. You can have anything in life you want if you just help others get what they want. Confidentiality notice. This email is intended for the use of the individual addressees named above. If you are not the intended recipient, please close your eyes now. This email may contain information that is confidential. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.